Adayo Vyasanadanaha Sevaya Bhagavata Dastasya Madhudvisha Ratita Raso Bhavetira Adayo Vyasanadana Yat to whom? Desevaya by service Bhagavata of the personality of Godhead Kutatastasya of the unchangeable Madhurvisha the enemy of Madhu Asura Rati Rasa attachment in different relationships develops Tira highly ecstatic Pariyo of the feet Vyasana distresses Adana vanquishing. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: by serving the feet of the spiritual master, one is enabled to develop transcendental ecstasy in the service of the personality of Godhead, who is the unchangeable enemy of Madhu demon, and whose service vanquishes one's material distresses. Purport: the association of a bona fide spiritual master like the sage Maitreya can be of absolute help in achieving transcendental attachment for the direct service of the Lord. The Lord is the enemy of the Madhu demon. In other words, He is the enemy of the sufferings of His pure devotees. The word Rati Rasa is significant in this verse. Service to the Lord is rendered in different transcendental mellows, relationships: neutral, active, friendly, parental, nuptial. A living entity in the liberated position of transcendental service to the Lord becomes attracted to one of the above-mentioned mellows. When one is engaged in transcendental loving service to the Lord, one's service attachment in the material world is automatically vanquished. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Raso Vajam Raso Piyasya Param Drishta Navatati.
Just want to say that's a ginger tea.
Huh? Oh, yes. By developing attachment for serving Guru and Krishna, one naturally becomes liberated from material entanglement, and one becomes happy. That's what this verse is about. You know, this happiness, it's a big topic, actually. You know, so many books written about happiness, so many seminars, so much research. You know, in America, the American government was wondering, what makes people happy in America? You know, and they did this big, elaborate survey and interviewed thousands and thousands of people all over America to find who's happy, who's not happy. Because they started with the 200 Club. You know, in America, the 200 most wealthy people in America. And they found, even though these people were living the very high life, they weren't really so happy, actually, in so many ways. And they interviewed so many people on so many walks of life. When you think of all the different walks of life, they interviewed people that are married, people that are not married, young people, old people, you know, people that play sport, people that go to the gym, people that practice different religions and, people who embody different philosophies and of life and different walks of life. And I mean, it was an incredible, actually they devoted a whole Time magazine to this particular survey and their findings. It was very interesting. But at the end of that survey, what they found was quite remarkable. They found that the happiest people, out of all the thousands of people that they interviewed, were religious people. Religious people. Not just Hare Krishnas, but just in general religious people. People who put their lives in God's hands, always trusting that He has our best interest at heart. They found these people can actually cope better with the difficulties of life. They're less stressed. They have this natural feeling of natural comfort and joy, feeling of inner peace and sense of well-being. Because at first they thought, is it just that people like to get together in the church, they get together and they have friends there and this is what brings the happiness. But when they really looked into it, they realized actually there's more to it. There's more to it. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, he also showed us by example how one can always be happy in any condition of life and never feel the distresses of this world by, as much as possible, just chanting the holy names of the Lord, to always keep that holy name in your heart and in your mind. And just incessantly be chanting, while you're walking back to the ashram, you're chanting. While you're driving in your car, you're chanting. It's just constantly chanting the holy name. It's nice, actually. You're just walking down the street, you can have a little kirtan to yourself. Just chanting. And in this way, if you just really center your whole life around this chanting, you'll always be happy in any condition of life. You nearly feel the distresses of this world. Chanting, and Prabhupada said if you don't feel the ecstasy when chanting, then start dancing. Then you really experience it. So yes, this happiness, it's an interesting topic, and I think it's always interested me, and I kind of researched it a little bit, and I can share some of these little insights that I've had. Of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 63, there's a nice verse there that says, one who is not connected to the Supreme Lord can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And without peace, how can there be any peace without happiness? How can there be any happiness without peace? So it's a very nice verse, and we see that when one is firmly established on the spiritual path of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, one's consciousness becomes, you could say, transcendentally situated. It's not that the miseries of life disappear, but one feels just this inner satisfaction and peace and happiness, and therefore one's not so much affected by the miseries of material existence. However, on the other side of the coin, we see when the mind and intelligence have no spiritual focus, then what happens? They simply contemplate how to enjoy this body, how to enjoy this world. In this way, we see the intelligence is pulled this way and that way by the restless mind, the uncontrolled senses. One forgets one's real spiritual identity as an eternal loving servant of Krishna. And one loses focus of what the real purpose of life is, the purpose of existence. So ultimately there can be no peace or inner happiness for such a person, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So yes, this topic of happiness, it's a big topic actually. I mean, a question we may ask ourselves, is natural happiness, is it just a nice idea? Or is it something we have to create? Or is it just our natural state of being? You know, we may ask those questions, you know. And naturally, I think everyone has this universal desire and yearning to be happy. Does anyone want to be unhappy? Does anyone out there want to be unhappy? No, I don't think so. I think everyone has this universal desire and yearning to be happy. Therefore, we see, just generally in the world, you know, once people have their basic survival needs met, you know, they have a bed to sleep on, they have food on the table, and the other things they need for their basic survival, you know, some degree of material comfort, you could say. People look for more in life, don't they? You know, whether it's, you know, buying a new car, or a house, you know, or going on a dream vacation. People, they go on these dream vacations, you know, getting a new job or career, you know, getting married, you know, having a baby, you know, joining a club, you know, or a yoga group, or going to the gym, you know, get really fit, you know, even just joining a religion. You know what people are hoping for is that this thing will give me a deeper experience of being happy. It's a universal need that everyone hankers for. True happiness. It's quite natural and normal just to be happy. And we see, you know, we write so many, I mean, humans have written millions of books, you know, about, you know, happiness and about how, you know, people being happy in life, and they sing so many songs about happiness, and people dream. They dream of a happiness that would just simply go on forever and ever without any interruption. Unfortunately, you know, we live in this world of dualities. There's always happiness and distress, so you can't just get all the happiness and just join it all together and have it just a continuous flow of happiness without interruption, people are finding. And of course, even Aristotle, everyone knows Aristotle, he was a great Greek philosopher. He called happiness the goal of all goals. You know, if I gave you a piece of paper, if I gave you each a piece of paper, and I asked you to make 3 columns on that piece of paper, and then in those columns, in one of those columns, you'd write all the things you would like to be. You think of that, all the things you'd like to be. In another column, you could write all the things you'd like to do in your life, you know, the things you'd like to do. And in the other column, you could write all the things you'd like to have. I think when you think about it, all your dreams and desires, both big and small, would manifest on those pages, wouldn't they? Yes. It's amazing. But, I mean, would we write on our list just to be happy? Or is it something people overlook or take for granted? But isn't that what everyone and what we really want? Is simply to be happy. You know, whether we realize it or not, everything you do, in a sense, in life is aimed at making yourself happy. And that's why we became devotees. Because we saw all these happy devotees. You know, I remember when I first saw the devotees in Sydney doing the Harinam, I thought, wow, who are these guys? They look like they're from another planet. You know, their shaven heads, and they look so happy. Prabhupada would often comment, you know, that even the people were telling him, remarking, you know, your devotees, they look so blissful, so happy, you know. So it's the, you know, in a sense, it's the be-all, end-all of life. You know, when you see happy people, you want to also become like them. You want to be happy. It's contagious. Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is as contagious as a contagious disease. And actually, you know, they've done surveys, and they interviewed people from all cultures, all races, all different ages, religions, lifestyles. And when asked what they want in life, guess what they put at the top of the list? A desire to be happy. Even more important than having lots of wealth, having status and a good job, having some fame in the world, which is, you know, so important to people. Even, you know, the overwhelming obsession of our modern day world, sensual pleasure. No, they simply put a desire to be happy on the top of their list. Unfortunately, you know, people who are taking a serious look at this world are observing that although generally our lifestyles are better than ever, you know, people have so much money, so many material resources, they've got so much sense gratification at their disposal. So in a sense, that sense, people's lifestyles are better than ever. But what people are taking a serious look at this world are discovering that people are becoming more unhappy than ever. They're becoming more unhappy than ever, despite all this wonderful opulence that people are experiencing in their life. And actually, surveyors have found that especially in places like America, Europe, there is what they call an epidemic of unhappiness. You know, so many people just flocking to therapists, consulting divorce lawyers, you know, millions of people every year taking antidepressant drugs, reaching, you could say, midlife crisis with a sense of emptiness. You know, just so many depressed, frustrated, confused people turning to drugs, alcohol, even suicide. It's an epidemic of unhappiness in the world, unfortunately. Even the World Health Organization had declared that, had predicted that by these 1920s, which we're in now, depression will be the second biggest health issue, next to heart disease. I think, yeah. So it's a big thing. It's a big issue in the world today. You know, in terms of global illness, depression has taken the ranks. The question is, why is this happening? And this is what people, the American government's wondering, and so many people are talking about it. Why is this happening? So I suppose we could look at different levels of happiness. You know, first, we could look at unhappy. I think all of us, each and every one of us, knows the meaning of unhappiness. Everyone is experiencing, you know, anxiety. Sometimes you're stressed out, or you're lamenting about something, or you're hankering about something, or you're just fatigued, you're just really tired, or you're feeling low, blue, dreary, sad. I mean, everyone, sometimes you just wake up in the morning and you just don't feel good. I think everyone has that experience. Maybe it's just me. Because it's not the same as, clinical depression where people can't live a normal life. But, just sometimes, it's a world of duality. Sometimes you feel good and sometimes you don't feel so good. Did chant a few more rounds, read some Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, then we have another level of happiness, happiness for bad reasons. Can you think of any happiness for bad reasons? I mean, addictions, drugs, alcohol, gambling, overeating, oversleeping, excessive, sensual activities. People either trying to get high from unhealthy addictions or just trying to escape the numb of the reality of unhappiness. People get right into it. I mean, the whole world is basically swimming in intoxication. It's unbelievable. So many people. Prabhupada used to say, they become jolly for a short time, but it's not real happiness. Illicit drugs, alcohol, gambling, illicit sex. You put them together and they actually constitute a tremendous form of oppression on this planet. Millions of people addicted to all sorts of vices, which is just bringing people down and down into the lower levels of happiness. And of course, we see today, cities and the media are just full of advertising, just encouraging people to indulge in such activities. Making all these promises that they will give us happiness, they'll give us satisfaction. So many big economic manipulators actually prey on us. They make a big business by deliberately encouraging our complete dependency on these things. In this way, I remember a quote by Devanrita Swami. He was saying, in this way, our modern world is built to teach you to disrespect yourself, to abuse yourself in a very polished type of way. And it's, as Prabhupada said, the reality is that people may become jolly by a certain time. I mean, you see the people walking through the streets, they're all drunk, or they're high on drugs or something, and they're looking very jolly. But it's very short-lived. It's artificial. It's not really a state of joyfulness. And of course, when they wake up in the morning, they don't feel so good. We go out on the books too. In Service Paradise, we meet these ice addicts. It's incredible. There's so many people on this ice now. It's so addictive. And I was talking to one guy. He said, it gives you this real lift. But when you come down, you just feel so bad that you just got to get more. Yes. Of course, another level of happiness we could say is happiness for good reasons. Can you think of any happiness for good reasons? I mean, having good relationships. Having some nice material facilities maybe, nice car, nice house, nice family, good friends, successful career, financial security, enjoying good health, healthy sports, food, exercise. I mean, it is said that these things are important and necessary. People get pleasure from having the healthy things in life that they want. And of course, without re-establishing a loving relationship with Krishna, even the most successful people in this world, in their hearts, they're feeling this fundamental perception of some incompleteness. There's something missing in their life. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. They're not satisfied. Because this brings us to our fourth level of happiness. Could you imagine what the fourth level of happiness is? Happiness for no reason. Happiness for no reason. Happiness, a state of well-being, or inner peace and happiness that's not dependent on any external circumstances. You know, in our bhakti yoga culture, we call this the happiness of the soul. You know, the inner happiness, spiritual happiness. You know, actually this inner happiness is a state that's been spoken about in virtually all spiritual and religious traditions throughout history. You know, this concept of inner happiness is actually universal. You know, in Buddhism, they call this inner happiness causeless joy. In Christianity, they call it the kingdom of heaven within. You know, one that has that connection with the Supreme Lord. They experience the kingdom of heaven within. In Judaism, they call it an inner sense of holiness. Think of this inner happiness. An inner sense of holiness. Because in Hinduism, I think they call it, what do they call it? Pure bliss. Pure bliss. You know, in some traditions they refer to it as an enlightened state, an awakened state. Of course, also there's a lot of speculation going on in the world. So many theories in the world about what is happiness, how to achieve it. You know, there's like so many different philosophies and so many books on happiness and programs and seminars and telling you that just happiness is just a state of mind. They teach you this in the seminars. If you simply decide to be happy, you will be. It's as simple as that. Instead of frowning, you start smiling and you're happy. Just make up your mind to be happy and you will be. Of course, you know, this is because we have these, so you can fool yourself that you're happy. You can kid yourself that you're happy. I mean, you ask people on the street, you meet the most miserable people we sometimes out on book distribution, and you say, oh, how's it going, mate? He said, oh, I'm great, fantastic. Cheese apples, mate. You know, people don't always, they people pretend to be more happy than they really are. And of course there's the scientists. You know, they did this, they found this guy, they think he might be the happiest man in the world. Actually, he's an American scientist who's been practicing Buddhism for 40 years or so. And you know, the Buddhists, they just want to block out the world, block out all emotions, feelings. They just want to get into this voidism, where you just go into this world of nothingness. You know, you just meditate on the sound of one hand clapping. You know, this is the Buddhists. And just by blocking out, they feel, you know, this, when you interact with the world, it's causing suffering. And therefore, just go into this world of nothingness, where nothing exists. And then you'll find true happiness. And they stick all the things on his head, you know, they're trying to measure his heart rhythms and his body chemistry and his brain activities, and they do this with other people as well, trying to give new insights into happiness. Because they believe, actually, their conclusion is that we each have a happiness set point, a certain level of happiness. Which means that what they say in their conclusions of their research is half the reason while you walk around cheery or dreary is because you were genetically born that way. And the other half, the reason is, just your life experiences, the ups and downs of life, they create a certain level of happiness. They've done these experiments. They find, they studied this. It's interesting because this happiness set point, like this one guy, he won the Golden Lotto in America. It was like $300 million. Just imagine, generally if someone wins $100 million, they get this euphorial feeling, right? This, wow. I'm the king of the world. He's won $300 million. But after 3 months, it kind of wore off. He was just back to normal. And then on the other side of the coin, someone who's in a really bad car accident, they became paraplegics. Their whole life is shattered. They're in a wheelchair, and they feel so depressed and miserable. But after 3 months, it's all worn off. They're just back to normal where they were before. So the bad news is they say that you can't change your happiness set point. Ultimately, you're stuck with it for the rest of your life. But Bhagavad Gita tells us differently. It tells us that it's true. According to your karma, you're allotted a certain amount of happiness in this life in response to your activities you performed in your last life. However, the good news is, by sincerely surrendering unto Krishna, taking up the process of bhakti yoga, you can dissolve all your bad karma, and you can experience a feeling of unshakable fulfillment, inner peace, inner happiness. That's anandam buddhi vardhanam. It's always increasing. And at devotees, we've found that by putting the Supreme Lord in the center of our life, trying to serve Him, trying to please Him, by living the pure spiritual and godly life, chanting the rounds, doing the service, sacrificing some of our energy in His service, associating with devotees, coming to the temple, reading these sacred literatures, we naturally become happy. Much more than we could ever become happy just going out there in the world and trying to become happy independently of Krishna consciousness. Much more. So the proof of the pudding's in the eating, we tell people. You take up this Krishna consciousness and you'll definitely experience the results. In this verse, it's talking about living entity in a liberated position of transcendental service who becomes attracted to one of the above-mentioned mellows. When one is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, one's service attachment in the material world is vanquished. Service to the Lord is rendered in different transcendental mellows, relationships, neutral, active, friendly, parental, and neutral. That's very interesting. Look and read in this verse. So it's like, the spiritual world. This is what we learn in our Bhakti Yoga school, that beyond this body and mind, we have an eternal spiritual, transcendental identity and form in the spiritual world. It's amazing. We have so many incredible descriptions of the spiritual world, the kingdom of God, that people don't even have access to from our Vedic literatures, from the acharyas. We hear about the transcendental kingdom of Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world, how it's always just bubbling over with this deliciously tasty variety of astounding, delightful, transcendental activities, where Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is performing these thrilling, beautiful, and romantic pastimes which bring infinite spiritual happiness to His devotees. So it's mentioned in this, is upon hearing these pastimes, we may especially become attracted to a particular mela exhibited by one of the associates of Krishna. You know, sometimes I did home programs in the Indian places, and the Indian ladies, they have these little Gopal Krishnas. Have you seen those little Gopal Krishnas? They have on their altar little Krishna eating the butter. And and one lady, she was telling me, you know, this is Krishna, he's my baby. You know, every day I feed him and I bathe him, and you know, they're really attracted to this mellow of parental affection. You know, other people, just like on Gopastami or Govardhana Puja, we see Krishna Kirtan walking around dressed up as a cowherd boy. And he's so involved with the cows here. You think, my God, he wants to be a cowherd boy in his next life. He's attracted to that mellow already. So Lord Chaitanya, he told Sanatana Goswami that this attraction that we have for Krishna is natural. That a devotee who is practicing bhakti yoga should externally perform his routine spiritual practices here on earth, but inwardly one should always think of that particular mellow which he's attracted to. And that is another purport in the Bhagavatam. I can't remember where Prabhupada says that by doing that, a devotee can be transferred to that particular mellow in his next life. So in the beginning, we have this love in awe and adoration, this santaras. It means one simply thinks the Supreme Lord is great, that he's everything. And there's so many examples of that in the spiritual world. We have the trees, the clouds, the mountains, the river, the birds, the bees. And they're not like the mountains and the birds and the rivers of this world. These things in the spiritual world they're fully conscious living entities who have a direct relationship with Krishna. And they simply love Krishna in awe and reverence. Or there may be, or it is said, there may be no real inclination just to serve him. They just have this awe and reverence for Krishna. We see that sometimes people have that. They come to the temple, they come to the mosque, they come to the church, they pray to God, they have this awe and reverence, but they don't really have any inclination to want to serve him in any way, or they haven't been educated in the science of devotional service. Although we see, even in this Santaras, Krishna personally exchanges love with each and every one of them. Whether it's the Kadamba trees or the Jamuna River or the little birds or squirrels or, you know, his pet peacocks. Yes. I mean, when one's love intensifies or advances, one wants to serve the Supreme Lord as a servant, just like a servant serves his master. It's called dasyuras. Yeah, and a devotee in this mood, he has complete respect for Krishna, and he's just attached to pleasing Krishna with varieties of services. You know, preparing food and drinks and sitting places, making nice arrangements for Krishna's pleasure. And we see that in Krishna's pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan, he has his direct servants. You know, you just see, even when Krishna wakes up in the morning, when he gets out of bed, there's this whole elaborate, arrangement for, you know, how he's massaged with oils by his servants, he's bathed, he's dressed, you know, they comb his hair, they put on his ornaments, prepared certain drinks for him and different things to refresh him after his sleep. There's this whole group of servants who just perform these type of services. Then when one's relationship with Krishna increases in affection, it's called sakyaras, friendship. It's a sense of equality with Krishna. You know, there's still the consciousness that Krishna is great and service must be rendered there. But there's this extra feeling that Krishna is my dear friend. Therefore I must treat him in such a way that he'll be happy and satisfied, just like you treat a friend. Right? You always want to see that they're happy. You know, in this mood, they forget Krishna's superiority, and Krishna just becomes their lovable friend. And in Krishna's boyhood pastimes, we see the cowherd boys of Vrindavan. They perfectly portray this mood of friendship. And they just love Krishna as just a lovable friend. You know, it's like all day and night they're simply thinking of Krishna. You know, the cowherd boys, they wake up in the morning, they all congregate outside Krishna's house, and they're calling out, Krishna, Krishna, it's time to get up, milk the cows. They just come anxious to see Krishna, to hang out with their most dear, lovable friend, Krishna. And when this fraternal, friendly affection for Krishna further increases, it develops into paternal affection. Vatsalya ras, where the devotees with parental love for Krishna actually think themselves superior to Krishna. They're convinced that Krishna is absolutely dependent on their care and protection. Thus he cannot possibly live without them, just like, it's, we see Krishna's parents, Nanda and Yasoda and the elderly persons of Vrindavan, they have this degree of love for Krishna. Also, Prabhupada mentions the cows. They also have this Vatsalya ras because they're thinking they're providing Krishna with all the milk to nourish him. One thing we notice when we're reading about these mellows is there's an apparent similarity between Krishna's spiritual affairs in Goloka Vrindavan and the exploits of worldly people. Because everything that's going on in this world, parental affections, people serving others, people, having love affairs, this is like a perverted reflection of that perfect reality that exists in the spiritual world. So it's, and of course, when one's love and affection for Krishna develops to the highest point, it's known as Madhurya Ras, or conjugal love. Actually, Madhu from Madhurya means honey or sweet. Sweetness is the main quality of this conjugal love, this Madhurya Ras. And what happens in the Madhurya Ras is all the other mellows from all the other different relationships, like servitude, friendship, all these things, parental, they all get amalgamated in the mellow of conjugal love. And it's said, this is the highest perfectional stage of love for Krishna. And it was exhibited by Srimati Radharani and the gopis. And of course, to facilitate this mellow, Krishna personally expands his spiritual bliss potency into all these different gopis and Srimati Radharani, and it is said when Krishna is dancing with the gopis, it's compared to he's dancing with his own shadow. They're just direct expansions of his Ladini Shakti, his spiritual bliss potency. And of course, those exchanges of feelings between Radha and Krishna are said to be the pinnacle of this Madhurya Ras, the highest loving reciprocation in the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada explains that, ultimate devotional service which is performed in the spiritual world, in one's eternal spiritual form, in direct association with the Supreme Lord, that same devotional service which we perform in the spiritual world, in our eternal spiritual form, in a direct relationship with Krishna, that same devotional service in transcendental love can also be practiced here, in this material world, in our present body. And Prabhupada mentioned in one purport that this Hare Krishna movement was established for this purpose. Yes, to teach people how to turn a natural service attitude towards Krishna and thus revive their eternal loving relationship. And we know that Krishna, he is that beautiful, personal, loving and lovable aspect of the Supreme Lord. And he's offering his love to each and every one of us so perfectly and so completely. So we should all learn to become situated in our, what's called Nitya Svarup, our eternal spiritual identity, by identifying ourselves as the eternal loving servants of Krishna. So this is the whole purpose of the Bhakti Yoga process, to revive that understanding of our eternal spiritual identity. Of course, we don't know really what our eternal spiritual position is in the spiritual world at this moment. I mean, sometimes we read about very, very advanced devotees like the 6 Goswamis, and how their spiritual master at the time of initiation revealed their eternal spiritual position in the spiritual world. Narottam Das Thakur, for instance, he was an assistant to the 8 principal gopis in making beautiful milk sweets for Krishna. Was that Narottam? Yes. And sometimes he used to go into these meditative trances where he wasn't even there. He was actually going. He'd actually go into the spiritual world and performing these pastimes, making these beautiful milk sweets for Krishna. Oh, time to finish. What is? Do you have any quick questions? Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Oh, sadhana ki.